Freshman Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida humiliated the GOP during a hearing for their weak culture war priorities, despite Republican James Comer's best attempts at a Hunter Biden whataboutism. Intrigued? Then click that like, subscribe, and the alert bell, and maybe check out my Patreon, and enjoy the video. So even though Democrats technically lost control of the House of Representatives back in November, I think we can take two consolation prizes away from it. Number one, it's been hilarious to watch the GOP desperately try to get their stuff together during this congressional session. The fact of the matter is that they are in colossal disarray. We see Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, screaming invectives at each other. There was a near physical altercation during the 15 attempts to elect Kevin McCarthy to the speakership. Kevin McCarthy himself is desperately trying to hold these wildly disparate factions together in terms of a cohesive unit and failing. That's one consolation prize. The second consolation prize is that this incoming class of freshman Democrats in the House of Representatives are extraordinary. You have Dan Goldman, you've got Jasmine Crockett of Texas, and another one is Jared Moskowitz of Florida, who I've covered in previous videos. Dude is hilarious. Dude is incisive in terms of his questioning, in terms of his rhetoric. And I think that he has got a bright future ahead of him in terms of a political and rhetorical heavyweight. And one of the things he's very, very effective at is calling out Republicans for their weak culture war talking points, because as again we've said on this channel, and it bears repeating, it's very important. The Republican Party, whatever their strengths are, however you may feel about the GOP, in terms of their record, in terms of their popularity, in terms of their policies, they factually, empirically suck compared to the Democratic Party. It's simply a fact. Republican policies are consistently unpopular with the vast majority of Americans, and depending on what specific policy you're talking about, that range varies. But overall, the Republican platform is considerably less popular than that of the Democratic parties. Their record, the governing record of the Republican Party, is vastly inferior, both economically and socially, to the Democratic parties in terms of the modern U.S. history, past 40 or 50 years. So to compete, Republicans have to rig the game of electoral politics, and they have to lean into, these niche culture war talking points, which don't matter to the vast majority of Americans, including their own constituents, right, in terms of making a material difference in their lives. But they're really, really good at weaponizing these niche culture war points and hyping up the base. And Jared Moskowitz points this out. Listen, when it comes to responsible governance, when it comes to legislating, you guys suck. You guys have given up. Democrats are much better. And he's really, really good at calling them out for that. And so this is a great exchange. It's about a minute long between Jared Moskowitz and James Comer, who is the head of the Republican House Oversight Committee. And he's basically leading the charge into the various political witch hunts against President Biden. So watch this exchange and we will unpack it.
Let me tell you something. Here's the score. Gun violence hearings in the 118th Congress, 0. Gas stoves, 3. That's all you need to know about what's happening in the 118th Congress.
So as a reminder, Republicans are taking the position that Democrats, because there are credible studies suggesting that gas stoves, particularly older gas stoves, are correlated with an increase in cancer for households, which makes sense, right, because you're breathing in those noxious fumes. The fact that Democrats are sensitive to this and want future homes and additional housing to phase gas stoves out for safer options, or to try to control the amount of gas, to regulate the amount of gas from these stoves that families are breathing in. Responsible governing things. Republicans are desperate to weaponize it. See, they're coming for your gas stoves. This was all the rage in Texas and in Florida in terms of, again, the rhetoric surrounding it, at about the same time that Tucker Carlson was complaining about how the green M&M was wearing sneakers instead of heels. So it was kind of helixed with that sort of, again, nonsense BS culture war talking point. And again, Republicans and their surrogates made hay of it. Ron DeSantis famously crusaded about gas stoves in Florida, even though the vast, vast majority of Floridians don't use gas stoves. And when I say vast, I mean 80 to 90% don't use gas stoves. But he still, because again, all he can do is traffic in these stupid culture war things, he made that a priority for his political career in Florida just a few months ago. So Jared Moskowitz is rightly pointing that out. We've had 3 hearings in the federal Congress of the United States about gas stoves and not a single one about gun violence. Let's continue.
I yield back.
Chair now recognizes our good friend from Kentucky, Chairman Comer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your leadership on this issue. And I have to respond to the gun violence. What good does it do to have gun laws on the books when you waive gun penalties for privileged white children of high elected public officials?
And of course, James Comer, again, who is leading the House Oversight's multiple witch hunts into President Biden and the so-called Biden crime family and targeting Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, who, again, has been investigated between federal law enforcement and Congress like 4 times in the past 4 or 5 years. Hunter Biden, who, again, is a private citizen. Yes, he's a troubled man, a drug addict, somebody who has committed crimes. He's pled guilty to 2 misdemeanors. But is a private citizen and who has never held a position of power. Is he nepotistic? Sure. But when you compare his nepotism to that, say, of Ivanka and Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's daughter and son-in-law, Hunter Biden is vastly inferior in terms of that nepotism. They are so much worse. And they held positions of government power. James Comer doesn't care about that. But notice the whataboutism. He's trying to justify, listen, well, the reason that we're not having any hearings in Congress about gun violence and gun deaths and gun homicides and mass shootings is, I mean, my God, Hunter Biden, pretty weak. And you can see it on his face, right? He's like, ha-ha, I gotcha, right? Because right now, Hunter Biden's in the middle of fighting a gun charge, a very rarely used gun charge, by the way. So they actually went out of their way, you could make the case, to hit Hunter Biden with this very rarely applied gun charge. And James Comer's like, ha-ha, gotcha. So what's the point of trying to address gun violence here in the United States when that's going on? Interesting choice. But let's hear what Jared has to say.
Will you yield?
I'll yield.
Mr. Chairman, there were 17 people killed at my high school in my neighborhood. And so let's not make gun violence.
I'm not making gun. I yield my time back. You asked a credible question. You're not serious.
So did you hear that? Did you hear that? James Comer, the Republican who thought he would go in for a Hunter Biden whataboutism gotcha combo, is saying that Jared Moskowitz is not serious because Jared Moskowitz wants to address gun violence in this country, given that he personally experienced the death of multiple classmates in a mass shooting. Hunter Biden is serious. That's serious, according to James Comer. That's a serious thing to bring up in a hearing that has nothing to do with Hunter Biden. On a tangent, that really has nothing to do with Hunter Biden because it was really about gun violence, and Hunter Biden has not been credibly accused or found guilty or been charged with or under investigation for anything to do with gun violence. But that's serious. That's okay. That's serious. But Jared Moskowitz correctly pointing out, like, hey, mass violence, gun violence, mass shootings, school shootings, these are relatively ubiquitous in the United States compared to other advanced countries, and I've personally experienced the consequences of it, and I don't think we should I don't think we should try to, go for a gotcha there pertaining to Hunter Biden. James Comer's like, well, he revoked. You could see he made the mistake, the rhetorical mistake there. But according to James Comer, it's Jared Moskowitz not serious. The Republican Party focusing on gas stoves. 3 hearings about gas stoves, trying to pretend that Democrats are coming for your gas stoves. That's serious. Hunter Biden, investigating him for the 4th or 5th time, that's serious. But having hearings about the incredible rate of gun violence in the United States, that's not serious. Interesting approach.